The PS5 Pro has officially been unveiled, and though there's no shortage of discourse around whether or not the upgrades it offers over the base PS5 are enough to justify its eye-watering $700 price, or even to justify its existence for that matter, it also goes without saying that, at the same time, there's going to be some excitement around seeing how different games will be able to leverage and benefit from the added capabilities that the mid-gen console is bringing to the table, from its faster rendering and its advanced ray tracing to the all-new PSSR and more. Here then, we're going to go over a few games that we're hoping will be enhanced on the PS5 Pro, to the extent where it makes an actual, tangible difference. Black Myth: Wukong. Black Myth: Wukong is one of the most visually impressive games we've seen in recent times, but that it does come with some technical rough edges, especially on the PS5, is undeniable. Of course, the base PS5 is very much capable of running a much smoother version of Game Science's action RPG, and hopefully, with patches, in the not too distant future, it will. That said, we'd also be curious to see what the studio can do with the PS5 Pro's hardware, because the prospect of a game that already looks so gorgeous looking even better is an intriguing one. Silent Hill 2. If there's one area where Bloober Team never fails to knock it out of the park, is its visuals, and with the upcoming Silent Hill 2 remake, the developer looks to be hitting similarly high standards where production values are concerned. With Silent Hill 2 launching not long before the PS5 Pro and serving as a tentpole console exclusive for the PlayStation, we'd be surprised if Sony doesn't work with Konami and Bloober to use this visual showpiece to highlight the PS5 Pro's capabilities. Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin's launch earlier this year was a mixed one, and though the open-world action RPG certainly drew praise from many for its action and combat loop, in other ways it was more than a little rough. Visually, for instance, Rise of the Ronin can be an inconsistent experience, especially if you're playing in performance mode, which from a gameplay perspective is the best mode to play. The PS5 Pro is, of course, being sold on the promise of not having to compromise and have to choose between fidelity and performance any longer, and Rise of the Ronin seems like a perfect game to illustrate how well the console can do that. Remnant II. Gunfire Games delivered one of the most underrated games of the year last year in its Souls-like RPG shooter, Remnant II, so of course, it's still very much on our minds. So much so, in fact, that we'd love to see it properly enhanced for the PS5 Pro. From the gorgeous and morbid environments that it has you explore to the incredible action that it throws you into, Remnant 2 is a deceptively impressive game from a technical perspective, and it should flourish even more with more powerful hardware. Tekken VIII. Tekken 8 is one of the finest examples we've seen so far of what a current-gen only game built on Unreal Engine 5 can look like, because boy does it look good, and somehow even better in action. Of course, being a fighting game, performance is king in Tekken 8, and though we'd want to see it keep its priorities the same, we'd also love to see what an even better looking version of the game that runs just as well, if not even better, would look like. Thankfully, the PS5 Pro can make that possible, on paper at least. Until Dawn. Until Dawn is getting a remake soon, so it won't be long before we see a significantly better looking version of the classic PS4 horror adventure title. And given the fact that it's one of PlayStation's major upcoming first-party releases, we'd be surprised if it didn't tie into the PS5 Pro's release as well. The console will launch not long after the remake, so we're definitely expecting a PS5 Pro patch for the game within a few weeks of its release at most. Elden Ring. Elden Ring is no technical stunner, but it's also one of the best examples of how a game can still look drop-dead gorgeous even without the most cutting-edge tech. It does, however, have some rough spots here and there, especially in the performance arena, so a PS5 Pro patch would go down pretty nicely. From Software's open-world masterpiece is, after all, one of the most popular and successful PlayStation 5 games, so we wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the first titles to be upgraded for the upcoming Pro. Dragon Age: The Veilguard. It was honestly a little surprising that Dragon Age the Veilguard wasn't already included in the first batch of titles officially confirmed to be getting a PS5 Pro enhancement, given the fact that it's a major upcoming release, but we'd still expect to see it upgraded for the console in the very near future. Hopefully with the console's advanced ray tracing and PSSR tech, the action RPG can come close to matching its PC version's fidelity. No Man's Sky. Despite the fact that No Man's Sky is close to a decade old at this point, it still looks incredible, thanks not only to its gorgeous art design, but the technical upgrade that Hello Games has consistently kept applying to the game behind the scenes. In fact, the latter is exactly why we'll be surprised if No Man's Sky does not receive a PS5 Pro patch at some point in the near future. From being able to stream worlds much faster to rendering everything with much higher fidelity and possibly even ray tracing, No Man's Sky can benefit from PS5 Pro in plenty of obvious ways. Lords of the Fallen. In a vast sea of Souls-likes, Lords of the Fallen managed to stand out last year, in spite of the many obvious gameplay and design issues that it had, and a large part of that was down to how drop-dead gorgeous it looked. That, of course, has been a running theme in this feature, but the dark fantasy world of Lords of Fallen in particular is one that we would love to see enhanced with advanced ray tracing implementation without having to sacrifice performance. Dying Light 2: Stay Human. Techland will soon be releasing another Dying Light game with Dying Light: The Beast, and we're sure it will be PS5 Pro enhanced at least to some degree. But before that, we'd also like to see Dying Light 2: Staying Human receive a facelift of its own. Though a solid-looking game in its own right, Dying Light 2 is something of a diamond in the rough, and with the PS5 Pro being billed as a console that can help developers sand out the technical rough edges in their games, at the very least, we feel like it would be a waste if Techland didn't take this opportunity to polish up its zombie-slaying action RPG. Cyberpunk 2077.
Hold your arm out here. I'll transmit a request to Central. Make sure everything's in order.
Cyberpunk 2077 had an awful start to life on consoles, and on a PS4, we still wouldn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. On PS5, however, CDPR's action RPG is an absolute stunner, bringing Night City to life with some of the most gorgeous, breathtaking visual design in a game this side of Red Dead Redemption 2. Cyberpunk's PC version has done wonders with its ray tracing implementation, so we'd love to see what the game can do in that arena on the PlayStation 5 Pro. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Star Wars Jedi Survivor was, unfortunately enough, a prime example of a spectacularly designed game being let down by significant technical issues upon release, especially on consoles. And though it is now a better experience, it's still not fully fixed. It only makes sense then that the developer leverages the PS5 Pro's greater horsepower to bring the game to the level it was always supposed to be at, right? One where it can look spectacular, boast incredible fidelity and ray tracing, and still have a solid frame rate. We'd be surprised if this doesn't happen sooner rather than later. Balers Gate 3. Balers Gate 3 is a mighty impressive game in more ways than one, but even its most ardent defenders will agree that it can chug a little bit on the technical side of things, whether that's during particularly hectic battles or when you're in a dense city environment. Its issues are obviously understandable. There's a ridiculous amount constantly going on behind the scenes in this game, so we're not sure if even on a PS5 Pro, all of that would be totally fixed, but we'd sure like to see Larian Studios take a shot at that. Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. Let's end with one of the more recent entries in this feature. Space Marine 2 is already one of the most technically impressive games we've played all year, because of the way that it has players fighting against literally hundreds upon hundreds of real-time enemies at once without missing a beat with its performance, while also looking as great as it does is honestly nothing short of wizardry. It almost feels greedy to ask for more, but damn it, we can't help but daydream about how much more impressive Space Marine 2 would look when rendered with the greater fidelity and ray tracing that the PS5 Pro promises. Hopefully we won't have to wait too long before we actually get to see that. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.